Be honest, how many of those weird yet wonderful things did you find mesmerizing? Even if you weren't sure what they were or what was happening, I bet just watching them scratched an itch you didn't know you had, right? Well, if you like that, then get ready to feast your peepers on even more fascinating and unusual things that you won't be able to take your eyes off. Phenomenal firefall. Yosemite National Park is, without a doubt, one of the most beautiful places on Earth. Amidst all of its flawless forest scenery, the spectacular Horsetail Falls seasonably cascades down the park's most famous granite rock face, known as El Capitan. As stunning as the 2,130-foot waterfall is by itself, under the right circumstances, it becomes even more captivating. For just 2 weeks in February, when the sun's light is at the optimal angle, the rays reflect off the granite behind the waterfall, coloring the falling water bright orange. Though it's not actually a blaze, the photo-worthy phenomenon is known as a firefall because it resembles a river of flames flowing down the rock face. It's so beautifully stunning that I can't take my eyes off it, and this is just a video. Hella hot mud. Now you probably know what volcanoes are, but have you ever heard of mud volcanoes? Unlike normal volcanoes, mud volcanoes don't spew out molten hot lava, but a much colder mixture of gas, water, and, you guessed it, mud. But this mud is mainly made up of organic material, and the bacteria in it gradually breaks it down to produce highly flammable methane gas. Although sometimes, when too much pressure from this gas builds up, it's released in such huge quantities that the bubbling mud can be set alight. Just like this mud volcano located in South Taiwan.
It's really rocking now.
Despite all the fire, that's gotta be one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Stunning ice circles. Back in 2011, this perfect circle of ice was captured slowly spinning like some kind of tiny, icy carousel on the banks of a small river. At first, bystanders believed that someone must have carved the perfectly circular shape out of the ice using something like a chainsaw. And while that might have been the case, these ice circles can also form completely naturally, like this one that formed in a bend in the Michigan River back in 2019. The way it turns is utterly hypnotic, but how does this fascinating natural phenomenon form? Well, one explanation is that strong eddies in these rivers break off and rotate sections of ice. As they spin, their outer edges are gradually worn down against the surrounding ice, leaving a perfectly frozen circle rotating in place. Although they're not always this small, because in Maine back in 2019, this utterly colossal ice circle was discovered spinning hypnotically in the Presumpscot River. At around a staggering 300 feet across, this freezing water feature is almost as long as a standard football field. I don't know about you, but I'd prefer to watch this over a football game any day. Ice baller. While ice circles are undeniably mesmerizing, the same can be said of ice balls. You see, ice melts quicker when more of its surface area is exposed to a liquid. So instead of diluting a drink with multiple ice cubes, some people create large, singular spheres for their beverages, which melt much slower. But their creation alone, which uses a specialized machine called an ice press, is hypnotic to watch. As you can see, a slab of regular ice is placed in between two huge heated aluminum blocks. The top one slowly presses down, melting the ice slab while molding it into two spherical curves in each block. In just a few minutes, the process produces a stunningly spherical ice orb. Now that really puts the press in impressive. Creative cloud chambers. Now, despite the name, a cloud chamber isn't a box that magically captures clouds from the sky, although it does technically contain a cloud. These chambers are used by researchers to display the invisible tracks left by radiation particles. To do this, a layer of alcohol or water is heated up and evaporated so that a thick cloud of vapor fully saturates the space within the chamber. This is a process called supersaturation. Once supersaturated, radioactive particles traveling around the tank bounce off the tightly packed, vaporized gas particles, knocking them aside and leaving mesmerizing tracks in their wake. It's like some kind of forbidden Etch-a-Sketch. I mean, just look how fast they move. What's even more amazing is that those particles aren't from anything famously radioactive like uranium. Those are just our environment's naturally occurring radioactive particles. Now, this is what uranium particles look like. As you can see, they're a lot more energetic and notoriously harmful. But as famously dangerous as it is, I could still sit and watch this for hours. Cracking lake ice. Now, it's not your eyes you won't be able to tear away from this next example, but your ears. Just take a listen to the noise this frozen lake makes as its ice slowly shifts and cracks. Doesn't it sound like a bunch of lasers firing? Well, this unexpected noise is caused by the ice shifting, likely because of temperature changes. As the inflexible ice cracks, the fissures emit sounds made up of lots of different frequencies. The high-frequency popping sounds travel faster through the ice, so they hit your ears first, followed by the low notes, giving them that ethereal echo-like sound. And the more cracks there are in the ice, like here on Gun Lake in British Columbia, the more amazing pops and echoes they produce. Kind of hard to tell if this is the sound of ice or the soundtrack to Star Wars. Bizarre beach blobs. Have you ever been enjoying a nice warm day on the beach when suddenly you notice a strange, sticky-looking blob in the sand? While some people just can't resist investigating, most simply assume there's some kind of trash or jellyfish. But sometimes, the sheer number of these literal tide pods scattered over the beach can be impossible to ignore. So just what exactly are they? Well, depending on their size, the tiny transparent blobs could be a species of comb jelly called Pleurobrachia playus, also adorably known as sea gooseberries. Unlike a lot of jellyfish, this species only grows to about the size of a teaspoon and doesn't have the ability to sting humans. However, their little swimming combs aren't powerful enough to swim against strong currents, leaving many stranded along beaches after the tide recedes. But that's not all they might be. Salps are another organism with stunning see-through skin. These creatures are chordates, which are animals with dorsal nerve cords, so they're closely linked to vertebrates. And that means they're more closely related to humans than they are jellyfish. Well, now that you know your sea gooseberries from your salps, which do you think these ones are? For sea gooseberry, hit that like button, and for salp, hit the subscribe. Or if it's clear that there's something else, let me know down in the comments. Los Angeles black balls. Back in the summer of 2015, residents of Las Virgenes in California were captivated by something they'd never seen before. The municipal water district was filling their reservoirs with truckloads of black balls in a stunning spectacle that's impossible to look away from. As mesmerizing as watching this reservoir being turned into the world's biggest ball pit is, why on earth did they do such a thing? Well, it turns out that these aren't just any black balls, but specially made shade balls. They're designed to cover the surface of lakes and reservoirs to prevent billions of gallons of water from being lost to evaporation. The protective layer they provide also prevents the water supply from being polluted by animals, and even stops toxic chemical reactions caused by the sun, altering elements in the water. And it's not just Las Virgenes that uses them. That same August, the Los Angeles reservoir was also filled to the brim with a whopping 96 million of these big black balls. At 36 cents per ball, The cost of this incredible cascade came to an eye-watering $34.5 million. Though still expensive, this was about $250 million cheaper than any alternative, like rolling out a specially made 175-acre tarp over the top of the massive reservoir. But if they really needed something cheap that was large enough to block out the sun, couldn't they just have hired your mom to stand in front of it? Glowing ghost mushrooms. Fabulous fungi can be found in forests all over the world, but there's one special subspecies that puts on a seriously surprising show. This is Omphalotus nidiformis, more commonly known as the ghost mushroom. When the sun sets, the fleshy fans of these 12-inch funnel-shaped fungi turn into nature's nightlights, all thanks to their unusual bioluminescent properties. But an explanation of exactly why they glow eluded scientists for over 170 years. That was until 2015, when researchers realized that there's almost no wind at the base of the trees where the flashy fungi grow. So, in order to reproduce, they needed a windless way of spreading their spores. As such, these magical mushrooms have evolved to produce molecules called luciferins, which react with the air to generate light. It's the same compound that gives fireflies and deep-sea creatures their eerie glow. But instead of using the light to attract a mate or a meal, the ghost mushrooms use it to attract bugs. These light-loving visitors brush against the fungi, and in doing so, help it spread its spores. Now that's what you call a bright solution. Levitating light shows. While magical mushrooms can light up the ground, there are even more mind-blowing light shows happening above your heads. In recent years, aerial drone light shows have become a popular alternative to firework displays, and you can definitely see why. In April 2020, Verge Aero brought this spectacular display to the heart of Philadelphia, writing their message of thanks to essential workers and healthcare providers in the sky. Using some clever engineering and design software, 150 individual drones were fed a series of complex commands that moved them about the sky in predetermined patterns. The result was a perfectly choreographed show that shifted seamlessly from flashing messages of thanks to a waving American flag and even the EMS Star of Life. But if you thought 150 drones were cool, just wait till you see what 1,500 can do. As part of China's 2020 Spring Festival, Demoda took over the Shenzhen skyline with an utterly spellbinding show consisting of 1,500 drones. They flawlessly created famous landscapes from around China in the sky, and even hung a traditional decoration up among the stars. It almost looks better than the real thing. Not only are displays like this breathtaking, but they're much cheaper than fireworks, because unlike their explosive counterparts, both the drones and their choreography software can be reused. London's New Year's fireworks, for example, cost a staggering £2.3 million for just one 30-minute display. That's about $3.2 million. But a show with just 500 flashy drones costs a fraction of that, at around $300,000. So with that said, has anyone got $299,995 I could borrow? Quirky quicksand. In the movies, quicksand is dramatically depicted as a surefire death trap that slowly sucks its victims under. But while the truth about quicksand is much tamer, it's actually much cooler to look at in real life. So peel your eyes off the silver screen and look to the sandy shores of Morecambe Bay in England. That ground may look solid, but just watch what happens when you step on it.
Yeah, I don't really know what... there's bound to be.
Parts of the sand lining these shores has become waterlogged, so while it looks solid on the surface, the second you step on it, the sands begin to liquefy. The longer you stay in one place, the more layers of water and sand separate, so the densely packed layer of wet sand can suddenly trap you in. But if you dance around from spot to spot like this guy, the layers aren't put under enough prolonged pressure to separate. Although, depending on how fine the sandy sediment is, the surface can look unsuspectingly dry and solid until you start stepping on it, like this lady found out. As strangely satisfying as that is to watch, I don't think her sneakers are going to stay that white for long. Gorgeous geodes. Geodes are nature's true hidden treasures. These spherical rocks don't look like anything special on the surface, but their cavities are lined with minerals and crystals. Most are formed from the gas of old lava bubbles, which have been put under colossal pressure for thousands or even millions of years. Eventually, the minerals in the gases crystallize, coating the cavity in a growth of gemstones. And they can range drastically in size, measuring from just a few inches to tens of feet in diameter, and weighing from a couple of grams up to several tons. And while their insanely sparkly interiors are hypnotic to look at by themselves, they're nothing compared to actually cracking one open. But to prevent accidentally crushing the geode, many professionals rely on precision pressure cutting tools, like this cast iron pipe snap cutter. This loops an industrial-strength chain around the geode and gradually constricts it until the geode cracks cleanly along the length of the chain. Then they slack the chain up, take it out, and reveal what's been waiting within it for all those years. I'm not sure what's more satisfying, the crack or the reveal. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments. The biggest blisters. Almost no one can resist the urge to pop an angry, fluid-filled blister. But what if one appeared in your yard? You'd want to squeeze it and watch whatever was inside burst out, right? Well, bizarrely, the workers down at this golf course managed to catch that exact moment on camera. And what an excellent, if not weirdly placed water feature it is. Sometimes called grass blisters or turf bubbles, these bulging blisters can form when a water or irrigation pipe nearby bursts. This rush of water gets trapped between the turf and a layer of plastic sheeting laid down by landscapers underneath, which is used if the original soil is of poor quality. They then shovel new, good soil on top so that the grass they plant grows well. But if the water can't flow through the top of the turf fast enough, it builds up in these big, bouncy bubbles, although they're not always filled with water. Just listen to this.
That's what it is? No. Oh, it's just got air? I thought he had water in it.
That bubble was filled with air, or more specifically, methane. Many golf courses like this are built over the top of old landfills, but as the trash below decays, it releases methane gas, which rises up, creating these funny, flatulent bubbles underneath the pristine turf. Now, which one do you want to do more? Watch it deflate slowly for hours on end, or just jump on it? Cool, cold pop. The only thing more mesmerizing than watching the iridescent swirls on a soap bubble is watching icy crystals whirl around them as it freezes solid, like this. And this hasn't been sped up. It's freezing in real time. In less than a minute, the entire watery orb is frozen solid. But how does it freeze so fast? Well, when a bubble is in a freezing environment, the first part to freeze is the bottom. But the flow of the liquid in the bubble breaks up freezing particles and carries them off, creating this incredible snow globe effect while freezing the entire structure from multiple points. Even though the science behind this is pretty complicated, it just makes it all the more magical to watch. Awesome acrylic pour. Have you ever mixed a whole bunch of different colored paints together? Even if you use super bright colors, it almost always mixes into the same weird shade of muddy brown, unless you use this mesmerizing method, which is called the acrylic pour. Acrylic paint is a kind of polymer paint, the colorful pigment of which is made up of very large molecules. So, when two different paints meet, the sheer size of their molecules prevents them from immediately bleeding into each other. This means they can be layered on top of one another like this, and then delightfully drizzled to create magical masterpieces. As it's poured, the different layers of paint spread out gradually, creating this beautifully layered paint pour. But to finish this piece of art off, the canvas can be tipped to drag the paint in different directions, creating a color cascade with different layers all along it. Is anyone else adding this to their oddly satisfying playlist? Rainbow lightning. If you're the kind of person who likes getting a 2 for the price of 1 deal, then you're gonna love what happened during this Oklahoma thunderstorm. Did you catch that? Well, let's slow it down and see it again. Watch as that lightning strikes across the same point in the sky where a rainbow has formed. Now that's 2 natural phenomena in one, and the science behind it is just astounding. Lightning that spreads out like this is known as anvil crawler lightning, as it looks like sparks flying off the top of an anvil. Instead of striking from the cloud to the ground, this lightning crawls from cloud to cloud as the storm's electrical balance equalizes. Usually this happens inside the clouds, so you don't see it. But in this case, the clear conditions not only revealed the lightning, but the sunlight refracting off the storm's rain also produced a perfectly placed rainbow. What a natural bargain. Water that hates water? When you spill a little water, it splashes in just about every direction and soaks everything. Or at least it usually does, unless you've mixed it with powdered aerogel like this. Whoa, it's acting more like liquid mercury than liquid water. And this is because aerogel is a synthetic, ultra-lightweight substance that's specifically formulated to be hydrophobic, so it doesn't absorb water at all. In its powdered form, it can be used to coat surfaces, which prevents the buildup of condensation and makes them completely waterproof. However, when the powder is also immersed in the water, like it is here, it takes on some amazingly mesmerizing properties. The substance acts like it's trapped in a bubble and resists joining back to separate globules. But it's not just its own contact it resists. The substance keeps itself so well contained that the beads it forms can be moved around and even cut with a sheet of paper. How amazing is that? Incredible instant freezing. Now, we all know that water can exist as a flowing liquid and as an icy solid, but have you ever seen it go from liquid to solid instantly like this? As well as being super cool to watch, it's also got some super cool science behind it, literally. You see, water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, but in order to become ice, water molecules need to organize themselves around impurities, also known as nuclei, in order to crystallize. But in distilled water, the impurities are filtered out. So even if the water reaches its freezing point, it can't change states and becomes a super cooled solution instead. But a single shockwave can change the molecules' arrangement and force them to crystallize. So, just by tapping the bottle, the water freezes instantly. What's more, if this super-cooled water hits any other ice which contains those essential nuclei, the process of crystallization travels up the stream. This means if it's poured onto an ice cube, it creates an instant ice sculpture. Well, now that we can turn water into ice instantly, is anyone else thinking about putting on a dress and recreating their favorite scenes from Frozen? No? I mean, yeah, no, me neither. Hot water versus cold weather. Now, what I'm about to show you is really cool, or hot, depending on how you look at it. But I need everyone watching to promise that they're not going to try this at home. Otherwise, you might end up in my embarrassingly dumb ways people died series. So are you ready? Okay. Watch closely as this guy throws a mug of boiling hot water into the air on a minus 10 degrees Fahrenheit day. How spectacular was that? It looks like the water froze immediately, but that's not quite the case. That big cloud over his head is actually condensate, or water that has quickly condensed into tiny droplets, like the little clouds your breath makes when it's cold outside. And those stunning streaks are condensate coming off the spreading water droplets that have been flung into the air, not water that is instantly frozen. For that, the air outside would need to be a frosty minus 42 degrees Fahrenheit. And while it's still utterly mesmerizing, remember, It's much safer and warmer to watch the professionals do it on YouTube. Which of these unusual things could you not take your eyes off? Let me know down in the comments below, and hey, thanks for watching.